Hello, and thank you for joining me today. So, I have never really shared my story with the community and how I became a data scientist, how I ended up teaching master students around the world in a really very short a time in this industry. And so, I wanted to share a little bit about my story, how I ended up where I am, and how I became a teacher to students, to masters, PhD students around the world. Okay, so this story, it starts off in Colombia. I was alone in Colombia during the pandemic, kind of trapped in my apartment. They were very strict there. We weren't really allowed out in any real sense. Um, the medical system is good there, but obviously not as robust as North America. And they thought better just not to make sure no one gets sick than deal with what could happen in terms of the stress on the healthcare system. So they kind of not locked us in, but we had very limited ability to leave our house during the pandemic. So not the most fun, truthfully. Um, they let us out right in the middle of the pandemic. Was the first week they let us out of the apartment, really to go and do things aside from going to shop. And I went and to a friend's house. I bought a bike, thinking I remembered how to ride. It had been like 15 years, and I like, how hard could it be, right? And so I went and visited my friend, and hung out with him for the night. And I came back, and I was coming back in a rainstorm. I was like, I'll be able to do this, no problem. So really steep hills in Poblado where we were, and really steep hills coming down the hill, and well, I'm not surprised, but I got into an accident. It's really not amazing. There's a speed bump around a blind corner, and I'm not surprised when I hit it. I fell. You couldn't see it, and so it doesn't really surprise me. But what happened is that something actually hit me underneath my helmet as well, and but almost killed me. And I spent a little while in a coma after that. Spent a month in a coma, and it was tough. I don't remember it. It was tough for my family though, but it was a not a pleasant experience. I don't really remember it. I remember waking up in the hospital speaking Spanish to the nurse, but I don't I lost a month of my life. And it was all because I had a little biking accident. Right? That's not supposed to happen if you wear a helmet. How can something hit you underneath your helmet? I still don't get that, but definitely did happen. I still have this scar to show it, and changed my life, changed the direction of my life at least. One of the things that I realized when I had, starting my recovery and as I was going through the recovery process, I had already started studying data science, kind of very informally, very kind of on the side. I had finished the CFA, mastered finance. I was looking for my next, thing to study. And I figured, why not data science? And, after my coma, they say your personality changes a little bit. I don't know if I really noticed that so much, but I found this amazing love and curiosity for data science. And I really found that my curiosity was satisfied by the ability to work with data. And so it just kept driving me to continually to push this. And so I really realized not long after I recovered from my accident, I wanted to switch careers and I wanted to become a data scientist. Now, I'm not young at this point. It was only a few years ago, and it was three and a half years ago was my accident, and so still not very young at that age. And I really needed to switch quickly, right? But so I'm in my 30s. How do you do a career change in your 30s, right? And I don't, I spent 10 years studying things in finance just to switch, right? So I wanted to figure out how can I learn faster? There has to be a faster way. There has to be a way to do this as fast as possible. So, I had kind of took a different approach to studying data science. Instead of learning how to study, or instead of studying data science from the beginning, I learned how to learn first. So I had a brain injury. I was a little bit older. Well, my brain injury was very small, I would think, very like the minimum it can be. But they took very good care of me in the hospital. But I had a little brain bleed, right? So I had a little brain injury, but I still had a brain injury. And really in the hospital, we weren't sure if I was ever going to be able, to really think ever, clearly ever again. But I also was a little bit older at this point, right? So I didn't have as much time to waste to if I wanted to switch careers. How am I going to do this as fast as possible? So what I did is I spent time learning how to learn. Okay, like researching how we learn faster. And well, I really realized that we had been learning the way that I was taught traditionally in school, and I'm sure like most of you were traditionally taught, was something through called rote learning. So rote learning is learning by repetition, where we repeat something over and over and over again, and it works. I think this worked for thousands of years in terms of language. Because when you're learning a language, you repeat with using the muscles in your jaw, you repeat. And when you learn something through repetition learning, but with a physical movement, it locks things into a lower place in your memory. And that's why you can talk and the words are just falling out of my mouth right now because I've learned it through rote learning. And it really stores things, and we studied this, it stores things in a lower place in your memory, and it takes less energy, and you can actually see this, it takes less energy to recall something learned by rote learning. And so I think school systems just said, hey, well, it works for languages, let's adapt this and let's use this for everything. um, and so repeating math, rereading textbooks, rereading textbooks over and over again. And I don't know if you find it just doesn't seem to work that well. It never feels like that knowledge that I learned from rereading a textbook is falling out of my mouth like words are when I'm speaking. And so, could there be a better way? And so learning through repetition, you can see as it gets put in your brain, but it is not that easy to get back out. It's just kind of cluttered in there. It's in there somewhere. I know I studied this, but it's hard to really find your way out of, to find your way back to that knowledge. I really asked, is that the best that it can be? So this led me into understanding a concept of mnemonics, which is something that we've known about since the 60s. This is not anything new and crazy. Why it was not adapted in my education, I don't know, which kind of, bothers me a little bit. And really why I felt I had to make these classes. I felt there was a better way to learn, and I wanted to show people that there really was a better way to learn. So it's really about not repetition and not so much about time in. It's about intensity. And by intensity, I mean learning to learn like our brains actually work, okay, through connections. Okay, so in this classes, in my data simple classes, and really what I learned when I started learning and I started learning to switch industries, I started using mnemonics. I use stories. I use color patterns. I use connections within a story or within my past memories, relating things to the past events. And the thing is I can do mnemonics, and it's worked amazingly well for me to retain things after I've read them once or twice versus 10 or 20 or 30 times like it traditionally took. And so with this, I struggled with the concept of how do I share this like great, amazing tool that I found to learn. And it really was with the advent of the image generation technology that I'm finally able to, because I have a mnemonic when I'm learning something every day, and I make a little picture image, I make a little story around it. How do I share that, right? Do I go search on the internet for an image that maybe fits? And, it's very, very difficult. But this image generation allows us to, like this amazing picture right here, allows us to create new images. And that's only really one part of it, but allows us to visualize and to share these mnemonics, right? There's a story around them, there's connections around them. But we need the image as a base. And this is really, the idea of the AI enhanced program. It's not revolution. It is revolutionary, but it's not so crazy. It's not such a giant leap. It's bringing pictures that are customized to the learning content, and really allows us to have a little bit of fun while we learn, which they never, they don't really do a lot in school. But learning should be fun, because if it's fun, you're more likely to remember that and the concepts learned. And that's the point. Is I feel my job as a teacher is not really just to give you knowledge, to give you read from a slide or give you the information. It's to help students actually remember the things that were taught in class. I don't know. It's not really a thing that teachers take upon themselves as like, okay, you guys, I'm going to help you remember this. I'm not going to teach it to you, but I'm going to help you remember it, right? And that's the point, right? And I really feel like that's my job. Okay, and this concept of the mnemonics led into the data simple boot camps. This concept that we all really need to know data science these days. It's not something that is truthfully very optional for many professions in these days. And we all need to do it very quickly. It's not something that we have a lot of time to really, another 4 years of university to master data science is a lot of time, right? And so most of us don't have these. We're working professionals. And so, how do we switch careers? How do we learn what we need to know about data science to build on what we already know? And this concept of mnemonics, I hope, brings the concept of how do you learn faster? How do you learn the first time instead of having to repeat things 10, 20 times for it to stay in your mind? And then how do you retain that knowledge longer? How do you make sure it's actually staying with you for a longer period of time and you're able to recall and work with it, find that knowledge inside of your mind? Okay. It's this idea of these boot camps, data simple boot camps, is that we're going to teach you in a way that helps enable your ability to remember and recall the things that we've talked about. And really, the goal is to get you to be data analyst, data scientist, machine learning engineer that much faster and quicker. Okay. So thank you so much for joining me today, and I'll see you in the Data Simple boot camps.